what I wanted to do is go over the one that says fertilizer schedule. It's pretty easy in the sense that you try to remember the holidays when you do the fertilizer schedule. So we just had Easter here this past Sunday. So the first one would be your crabgrass preventer. Okay, so you put this down now. The nice thing about all these products is they're going to last until the next holiday. So if you put this down now or you put it down here the last couple weeks, this is going to last until around Memorial Day, which then in turn you'll do like a weed feed, which is this one right here. So you'll do anything that says like, you know, dandelion. They do have another line in the Max Lawn. It's a red bag. It'll say weed and feed on there. So that would be your second application towards the latter part of May. Okay. And then what you'd want to do is that's going to last you till July 4th. And you're going to want to then do like your preventative grub control. So the grub control with this product, you want to put this down around July 4th, and you want to make sure that this stuff gets watered in. Okay, so there's a little bit of a insecticide in here so that you want to get it down into the root zone where the grubs would be, and then they wouldn't be there once they ingest it as a preventative, putting this down around July 4th. So again, you want to make sure this gets watered in. The one thing that I forgot to mention on the weed and feed is this is a granular product. So when I say granular, this is an actual, and you open it up and it's granulated fertilizer. You want to make sure that this is a little wet. And the reason being is you want this to hit the weed when it's wet, and then it gets absorbed into the weed and it dies out. What you don't want to do is put this down when it's like raining, because it'll get diluted down, the chemical that's in here. So you want to put this down when it's dry. And again, make sure, kind of look at the weather, make sure it's not going to rain like for about 24 hours after to get the full effectiveness of a weed feed. Is there any questions on that? So again, you're going to start with the crabgrass control. Really, there's no type of prerequisite in putting this down. On the weed and feed, you want to make sure the turf's a little wet. Maybe like on a dew morning, you'll put this down to make sure that the granular hits the weed. And then on the grub control, after it's applied, you want to make sure you can do some watering right after, or maybe time it right before rain. Okay. And then the next one would be like your Labor Day, which is like a slow release. And they don't have, you could use like a Milorganite, which is an organic fertilizer here, or you could use like any type of slow release fertilizer. But again, that's going to be like around, the first part of September, the end of August, around Labor Day. And then really the last one would be like around Thanksgiving, which would be just like a winterizer. So again, if you just follow the holidays, that gives you like a 5-step program in terms of fertilizing your lawn. Any questions on the fertilizer at all? Yes?
Particularly the weed and feed, I found that I apply it a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So I guess my feeder was not correctly adjusted.
He's got the mic right there for you if you want.
I just want to make sure I don't burn my lawn again.
Yeah, you want to make sure when you apply the fertilizer, it's kind of just a visual look. You want to make sure that you don't have a heaping amount of it in one spot, because that will kill the turf and burn it out. So if you do see that, you might want to just take your hand and just spread it out so there's no heaping clumps of fertilizer on your turf. So again, you just want to make sure when you do apply it, or if you make a turn your spreader off so that when you make the turn, the stuff's not pouring out and then it just sits in that one area. Okay? No, I didn't do anything with the grass seed yet. I just did a fertilizer schedule. Basically, you just kind of want to follow the holidays. And here's the thing, as I mentioned, Easter was just this past Sunday. If you fertilize the crabgrass this week or within the next 10 days, it's fine. It just gives you a guideline. It doesn't have to necessarily be on that exact holiday, but within a week's time, I would say, would be the optimum time to put down the fertilizer for those applications. And the big thing I mentioned, just with the grub control, when you apply this, you want to make sure it gets watered in. So try to time it right before rain. What I did is I wanted to go over the fertilizer. I also wanted to go over the grass seed, and then I wanted to go over some of the products that they have here that you could use as well in conjunction with the fertilizer. So they have a whole array of products here that you could use, from fertilizer to grass seed, and then some chemicals for different applications that you can use. And then I'll kind of go over what we do with, like Jay said, really, I live in Plainfield, but my neighbors and I will rent an aerator for 24 hours, and I think he said it was around 80 to $100 or something, but if you did it, you split it between 2 or 3 neighbors, you know, it's only going to cost you like maybe 20, 25 bucks. It's pretty inexpensive. So I definitely recommend at least once or twice a year to aerate or dethatch the lawn. And the reason being is, just to give you an example, turf's not going to grow in compacted soil. So what this does is it has plugs here. It actually takes the core of the turf or the soil out, and it'll actually provide some relief to some compaction. Maybe people are walking on it and that, but if you turn this around, you'll see it has some cores, and it literally pulls the soil right out of there, and it helps relieve the compaction in the soil. So it allows like water, air, and fertilizer to get down to the root of the plant. Yeah.
Can you go right over the grass with this?
Yes, you can go right over the grass with this. I'm pretty sure it's just you just got to lift it up, Jay, and it goes. Yeah, I mean, like a quick, yeah, it's pretty much self-driven. So you can just lift up this handle and it'll just go. And what you want to do is really try to go north, south, east, west. You really can't over-aerate the lawn. The more cores you pull up, the better. Okay? Yes?
With new sod as well, or sod that was laid last year?
I wouldn't do new sod because it might not have been rooted, but if it's been mowed 2 or 3 times, then you could go ahead and do an aeration, no problem. Okay? The big thing with this, again, you just want to make sure that you know, you do this at least once or twice a year. It's nice just to rent it. You can bring it back, and then you know, you don't have to buy one. So I definitely recommend. I have a dog in the backyard, and it makes a lot of compaction along the fence line. So I'll have to do this at least once a year just to loosen up that soil, and then apply some grass seed where it's kind of compacted and dead. Any other questions on it? This is a seeder that they have, and then this is like a power rake or dethatcher. You can do this too. So again, it's nice to go in with the neighbor if you can do it, and it helps defray the cost. It's pretty minimal. And again, the whole point of doing this is, you look at like, I mean, I'll give you an example like the Chicago Bears. They're aerating at least once a month because they have all these heavy guys playing on the field. Well, compacted soil, you're not going to have any turf grow there. So if you can keep the turf nice and loose, the soil, you're going to have much better turf in the long run. Okay? What I wanted to do too is just tell you a little bit about the grass seed, which is the next one. Actually, let's stay right here. I just wanted to give you like not to get too technical, but when you go buy grass seed, you're like, well, you know, how many seeds per pound are in grass seed? So what I wanted to tell you is with all the sunny and the ryegrass mix that Clark Devon has and the shady mix, everything is permanent, so which means it comes back every year. So like the annual ryegrass, this is something that comes up real quick, usually germinates within 5 to 7 days, and it's a turf type. So when I say turf type, it means that it's fine bladed. So when it comes up, it looks nice, it's attractive to the eye, and you have about 500,000 seeds per pound. And on this, with the soil temperatures with the way they are, grass seed's only going to germinate in soil that's above 55 degrees. So you're seeing a lot of dandelions being germinated right now. You're probably over that 55 degrees. So really this is the good time to go ahead and throw that grass seed down. Because really after you put it down now, you're probably going to see some germination here within the next 7 to 14 days. Assuming you can get some nice, you know, rain or irrigation on it. On the turf type perennial ryegrass, that's another species of grass that's in the Clark Devon mixes, 500,000 seeds per pound. What's nice about this one is permanent, and it comes up within 7 to 14 days. Okay. I just wanted to give you some different information on the species of grass that Clark Devon has, and it just gives you an idea of, you know, you're like, well, what am I actually buying? How many seeds are per pound? When does it germinate? This is just kind of a little bit of a study guide for you. On the creeping red fescue, this is mostly a shade-tolerant grass. You'll see this in the Clark Devon Shady Mix. It has 500 to 600,000 seeds per pound. This takes a little bit longer to germinate, usually 10 to 14 days. Okay? And the last one is Kentucky Bluegrass. That's something that is very small in size in terms of its seed count, and usually have about 1 million to 1.3 million seeds per pound. The only downside to it is that it takes a little bit longer to germinate, so you're probably towards 21 days in terms of germination. So again, with a lot of these grasses, you can see like the annual ryegrass, this comes up in 5 to 7 days, but a lot less seeds per pound. So there's always a pro and a con of some of these different species. What's nice is with the Clark Devon mixes, we have a little bit of everything in each Wix. So you get a little bit of everything in there. Quick germination, you have stuff that'll come up a little bit later, but then it'll fill in on its own. And so just to give you an idea, like I said, not to get too technical, but after grass seed germinates, like let's say a sod farm plants grass seed, and they're only seeding at 50 pounds to the acre. So if you can imagine, that's only like 1 pound per 1,000 square feet. But what happens is after they plant it and it germinates, it forms a rhizome. And what a rhizome is, it's just an underground root, but it forms a daughter plant. So over time, that bluegrass just formed a plant next to it, and then that one, and then that one. So the whole point is, after about 14 to 18 months, that grass fills in on its own, they cut it, and they sell it to you or they sell it to somebody else. So it just gives you an idea with like creeping red fescue and Kentucky bluegrass, just on its own progression, it's going to fill in on your lawn over time by doing just nothing, just feeding it with some fertilizer. I don't want to get too technical, but I just want to give you a little bit of a rundown on the different species of grass that we have here at Clark Devon. Again, just seed count and germination time and stuff. Any questions on the grass seed? And what's nice is, Jay, I know you guys have these in 10-pound bags. If somebody wants anything less, can they?
Sure, we have them in, we'll actually open the bag and you can buy it by the pound. 1/4 pound, 3 pounds, whatever you'd like.
And the nice thing, too, I want to mention, too, with grass seed is this. Let's say you bought it today, okay? And let's say you bought a 10-pound bag, and let's say, you don't use it all, or you have some for this fall. Grass seed's good for at least a couple years. What happens is after it's harvested, it's actually a little wet. And so what you'll find is you'll see the germination on a lot of these species are at 90%. If you wait a year later, it actually might be like 92, 93. What happens is maybe after a couple years, instead of having 90% germination like it does now, it might be at like 80. So the whole point is this stuff, as long as you just keep it dry and maybe keep it in a cool area, it's good for a couple years. So again, if you bought some now and you had some for fall or even for next spring, no problem. You'll have enough to, it'll still germinate. It's still good. There's no really shelf life on it is basically what I'm trying to say. Yep, Clark Devon, and just so you know, this is the sunny mix. They also have a shady mix, and then they have a perennial ryegrass mix, which is good for the sunny too. So if you wanted to buy either one will be conducive to, so for example, you bought this for sunny, this is going to do just fine. If it took a little bit of light shade, no problem. But they also have a 10-pound bag in the shady mix too. Well, you want to put it down, you wouldn't want to plant this like underneath a tree. You'd want to use the shady mix, obviously. But you want to make sure with any type of grass seed, it still needs a couple hours of sunlight per day. There's really no grass seed that can take 100% shade. So if you have something like that, you maybe want to consider pruning the tree, maybe plant some ground covers, or mulching it. So again, no turf. You might see something on like, I don't even know, one of those QVC or one of those channels, they say, yeah, buy this and it'll grow 100% shade. Grass seed or turf needs some sunlight per day to survive. So again, if you have the shady mix from Clark Devon, it just needs a couple hours of sunlight per day for it to thrive. But they have that in a 10-pound bag, and then you can also get it in, smaller quantities. Okay? Any questions on that at all with grass seed? Again, like I said, there really is no shelf life on it. Even 3 years later, on the tag here it has 90% germination. 3 years from now, it might be 70. So again, just keep it in a cool area and just don't let it get wet.
When we say 70%, meaning 70 will grow, 70% will grow?
Yes.
So try it and see what happens.
Yeah, if you got some stuff, sure, don't throw it away. Just throw it down, and you might see 70% of it come up. So basically, when I say 70%, you look at like the 500,000 seeds per pound. You might have 350,000 because you're at that 70% rate that'll start germinating. So yeah, for sure.
That would be in that category.
Yes, yep. It'll still get some germination. You just might be a little bit lower, but for sure you could still use it. Don't throw it out. And then what I did is I just gave you some information on the 3 mixes that Clark Devon has. The first one being the sunny mix. Again, obviously real good for sun. If you do get a little bit of shade, that's okay, a couple hours. What I wanted to do is give you like a seeding rate. So let's say you're coming out with a new lawn and you're like, well, how much seed do I get? You're going to get 4 to 6 pounds per 1,000 square feet. And then for established lawns, or if you're doing like an overseeding on your existing lawn, you're going to be at 3 to 4 pounds per 1,000. So again, you're going to be a little bit lower because you don't need to fill in all those spaces with grass seed if you already have some existing turf there. On the shady mix, obviously it's for shade. You only need a little bit of maintenance on this. You're going to be pretty much at the same seeding rate you would be for the sunny mix, 4 to 6 pounds per 1,000 for new lawn, and then 3 to 4 pounds for overseeding for a shaded area. And then the ryegrass, what's nice about this mix is that Clark Devon has, this mix comes up really quick. It's usually up within like 7 days. It's fine bladed, and I keep going back to that, and you're like, well, what is fine bladed? It's very attractive to the eye. It's dark in color, and on this, you're going to be at 5 to 7 pounds per 1,000 for a new lawn, or 3 to 5 pounds for doing an overseeding.
For shady, what's the best out of these choices? The premium shady?
Yes, that would be the best one to use, correct. Yep. And again, on the shady mix, you know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, if you have some areas where you're like, you know what, this gets no sunlight at all per day, there's no turf that can make it. As long as this is getting a couple hours of sunlight per day, the Clark Devon shady mix will do just fine here in the Midwest area. Okay? And then I kind of just put some information on the bottom for tips for a healthy lawn. I mentioned you want to aerate or dethatch your lawn at least once or twice a year. When you do use these machines, I mean, if you were to say to me, hey, gosh, I really pulled out a lot of cores, the more you pull out, the better off you're going to be, because you want that looser soil where water, air, and nutrients can get down to the root of the plant. If it's compacted and it looks like concrete, it's like a pancake, that turf's going to be dying out eventually over time. So you want to keep that soil nice and loose. Yes?
Is this something you would use as part of the plant?
Mr. Tarmac, you have a call waiting on line.
You could. Typically, you want to just make sure that the soil is going to be loose in itself, but you could aerate it before, but you want to make sure, like let's say you loosen this up with it. The gentleman had asked me to use this like after you did a sodding. You probably wouldn't want to do that on any new sod or new seeding until it's been mowed at least 2 or 3 times.
I've got like a real kind of thinned out, I need overseed. There's some grass there, but you know, so it's like half there, half not.
Yeah.
And are you going to cover how to do that later, like and how to plant seed?
Sure. What you could do basically on something like that for an existing lawn, let's say you have some patches and you're like, oh, where do I start? What I would do is I would get an aerator. I would go through that lawn and make sure you can go north, south, east, west, try to loosen up as much as you can. And then when you seed it, you want to make sure that it gets in the top 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of the soil. You don't want to go any deeper than that. Reason being is if you go too deep, if you get it 2 inches deep, it's not going to germinate. So you want to get it into the top 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of the topsoil. And I don't care what anybody tells you, the best thing is for grass seed is 2 things. Soil temperature has to be over 55 degrees, and then water. So you might say, well, how many times should I water? You probably want to water maybe 10 to 15 minutes per area. This time of the year, you could probably do it twice a week and you'd be fine. So it's just kind of common sense where if you see that it's dry, you give it a little bit of water. You don't want to soak it. You don't want to have puddles, but you just want to keep the soil moist. So if you can keep the soil moist, you're going to get quicker germination on that. So again, 2 things, soil temperature and light watering.
And sort of breaking up the soil to get the seeds into a 1/4 inch deep just with this thing, or if I don't rent this thing, is there another option?
You could use the, Jay, is this the power rake you said that, or, yeah.
I'm saying if I don't rake, if I don't want, if I don't.
Yeah, if you don't want to, then you're manually going to have to just kind of scratch that soil up a little bit so that you really, when you seed it, you kind of want to have an eyeball effect where you want to make sure that that seed gets impregnated into the soil. So if you seed it and you see the seed that's just sitting on the top there, it's not going to be effective because you could have the wind blow it away, or 2, I see a lot of times where people do a big seeding and they have birds eat it. So you want to make sure that that soil gets somewhat covered. And what you can do too, and I forgot to mention, let's say you do a seeding, you could use a starter fertilizer with it too. And it doesn't really matter which one you do first or second. You could seed first and then put this on top, or you could do this first and do the seeding right after. But I definitely would recommend like a starter fertilizer with the grass seed just to give it some nutrients to get going.
I've heard peat moss too.
You could use peat moss. The thing you just have to remember though is if you do any type of soil amendment like a peat moss or a gypsum, they might have mushroom compost. Again, you want to make sure you're just putting a very light layer over the seed. If you put the grass seed down and you put 2 inches of peat moss over it, it's probably not going to germinate. So you just want to give a very light covering. I would say no more than a 1/2 inch covering over this seed to make sure that it stays in place. Again, just common sense where if you're seeding and then you put down just a whole heaping amount of peat moss or mushroom compost and you just bury it, even if you water it, think about it. All that water's got to get down there and for that to germinate, get the sun, it's not going to happen.
So most important thing is breaking up the soil some, either this or manually.
Correct.
Kind of stiff rake.
Yeah, a stiff rake or like, I'm just trying to think what else I'm trying to think off the top of my head. But the looser your soil is, the seed bed, the better off you're going to be in having success in terms of germination and that turf to thrive.
And this alone would work fine, like you're saying.
Correct.
So wouldn't have to use a manual tool if I'm going over this like a few times.
Yeah, if you did this a few times, this is going to work it up enough where, again, you just have to eyeball it. If you have an area where it's compacted and maybe you can't get in with this, just scratch it up so that when you seed it, you want that seed in that top 1/4 to 1/2 inch in the soil. Yep.
Question over here.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know what the half-life of is for dog urine
Yeah.
on lawn, but clearly it's burned. Do you clear away the grass and then put seed there?
Correct. Yeah, you would just rake out the dead grass, and then underneath that, you just want to make sure that that soil's a little loose.
Okay.
And then once you scratch it up a little bit, then you can go ahead and seed it.
Okay, thank
Again, you just want to make sure when you put that seed down that it's just not sitting on the top of the
top.
soil.
Right.
Kind of even, a little bit lightly tamp it in, and so that it's kind of impregnated into the soil.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the dog urine too, I had a yellow lab, years ago, but their urine is so the toxicity of it during the winter she would just kill it, and so there's really nothing you can do. There's no grass that's immune to that, unfortunately. I mean, unless you're literally out there after they went to literally spray some water on it to dilute it down. That's the only thing that you can do.
Tim, right here.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay.
Never mind, sorry.
Okay. Oh, and then, okay, so, let's say you put your grass seed down, it's coming up, and you've mowed it twice, and everything's looking good. What you don't want to do is, let's say you get into the summer months, and now you're watering it every day for like 15 minutes. Okay, and you're like, oh, I'm doing great. You're actually doing more harm than good, and you might be like, well, why? Well, think about it. If you only water your grass for 15 minutes, guess where the roots go? The roots go only where the water is. So what you want to do after you have your grass established is spread out your watering for longer periods so that that watering goes deeper. So instead of watering 15 minutes a day, maybe water once or twice a week, but the water level's much deeper so your roots go deeper. So just keep that in mind, especially when you guys get into the summer months. Almost have it starve a little bit, and then when you water it, water the snot out of it so that you get a nice deep watering so those roots go down with it. Okay? And then I kind of mentioned, you're going to follow the fertilization schedule. You might say to me, well, which one could I skip and this and that? It's debatable. Just depends how good your turf looks. But if I was to, give you one that you could probably skip, would maybe be like your Thanksgiving one. You want to have something for the crabgrass. You want to have something for the weeds. You want to have something for the grub control, because if you don't put this down and then you get grubs, now you're replacing the grass seed later on in the fall, and then you don't have anything for the summer. So I would tell you, do at least those 4 at a minimum, and if you get to Thanksgiving and it's too cold, you could always come back the following spring with the crabgrass. That makes sense. And then I mentioned really the best way, when you look at the sod farms, when they plant their seed for the crop, they always use a machine, okay? And why? Well, this drops it right into the soil, the seed. So the more seed to soil contact that you have, the better success you're going to have overall when you do a seeding. So if you just throw it over the top and you're like, I'll throw, you want to make sure that that seed is impregnated into the soil. So again, more seed to soil contact, the better results you're going to have in terms of the seeding.
So kind of another similar, if I don't want to rent the tool, how do I do that by hand?
You're just going to have to scratch it up and then just make sure that it's nice. Yeah, exactly. Rake it in.
Break it in.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
This actually pushes it in the ground?
Yeah.
The soil?
Yep. Exactly. And then after seeding, like I mentioned, all these things have, purity and germination, and I don't care whose grass seed it is, whether it's ours or anybody else. If you don't water it, it's not going to come up. So again, something like this, if I was to tell you, you get in, let's say you're like, oh, I really can't water till May and it's a little bit warmer out. You just water it for 5 to 10 minutes. You're just giving it a light watering. It doesn't need a lot. You just want to keep the soil moist. Okay? Just remember that. Grass seed does not germinate in dry soil. It needs a little bit of water. Doesn't need a lot. Just give it a little bit of watering every day for 5 or 10 minutes. And then the big thing, like I mentioned, is, I would definitely recommend using like a starter fertilizer like this in conjunction with the seed so that you have a little bit better success rate rather than not throwing this down. Sure, will it still come up, but I think you'll have better success using a starter fertilizer at the same time as the seed. And what's nice about this bag, I'm sure, is it's a 16-pound bag, covers 5,000 square feet. Even if you don't use it all, you could save a little bit and use it for the fall or for the following spring. It's not like the fertilizer's it's not going to go bad. You just want to make sure you keep it in a dry area. Yeah, yep, they have it here, yeah. So, I didn't know if you guys had any other questions. Yeah.
I had heard that for planting, like early spring is better. As it getting a bit late, I'm not sure if I can do it for the next couple of weeks. Pushing into May, is that?
That's okay. I would say you want to get it in. I mean, if I was to give you a schedule, you could do it now through June 1st.
Okay, I mean, versus just waiting till fall. Will that take hold back?
You could do it in the fall too. It really, as I mentioned, the two successes for grass seed germination is the soil temperature. So right now the temps are a little bit over 55 degrees. But when you get into the fall, they're a lot warmer. So you could definitely plant it in the fall too if you wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah. What you don't want to do is, let's say you put it down February, okay, and let's say we got a couple warm weeks in March and now it starts to germinate, okay. But let's say March 30th we get a hard frost and that seed is just starting to crack the hull. That's where you can lose it. So I always tell people, always try to seed it now because soil temperatures are above 55.
But April is like optimum?
This is a good time. I mean, the fall's...
Up until June 1st and this side, on the spring side.
Yep. I would say from August 10th through October 10th. Yeah, would be your windows. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had people go out and seed the third week of October, and you get some nice warm weeks, and it's fine. It just depends on the temperatures.
Enough to take hold, get through the winter.
Exactly. Yeah, I would tell you, if you can have it where it germinates and you've mowed it 2 or 3 times, you should be good for the winter. Okay, yep. Okay, oh, and another thing, okay, well, the crabgrass, the nice thing with this fertilizer is this is a crabgrass preventer. So you can put this down and this will prevent any crabgrass seeds from germinating. So that's one. And then 2, on the weeds, they have a granular product called weeding feed. And with this product though, you want to put this down when it's a little wet because it's a granular. And what I mean by granular is you open this up and it's a granulated fertilizer. So you basically want to put this down when the turf's a little wet so that this can stick to the plant. And once it does, it'll eliminate it. What you don't want to do is, let's say you put it down today and then it rains 2 hours later. I don't know if it's going to be as effective as if you can do it where if you applied it and then you didn't have any rainfall for about 24 hours after. You want to get the full effect of it because there is stuff on here so for this to attach to the weed to kill it, but if you get rain right away, it might dilute it down and then it's not as effective or it might not work. Okay? And then the other thing too is they have a, on here they have a spray. You just put this on your hose and you can just go out and spray it, and this has a fertilizer with weed control too. Okay? And this is basically the same thing. This is just in a liquid form versus this is the granular form. They're basically going to do the same thing. And then just to go over some of the other stuff, Roundup, obviously, we call this non-selective. Non-selective means it kills anything. So this is going to kill grass. It's going to kill weeds. So you want to just be real careful when you spray this. You don't want to spray it on a windy day where if you're spraying some cracks in between your sidewalk or on your patio and you have some plants around, it's windy, you could get a little bit of spray off from the wind. So you want to make sure you apply this when it's not as windy out. And then this is just another one. Weed Be Gone, just a standard, weed and feed. I think you're going to have to put this in like some water, and then you go out and apply it on a lawn to spray it out. So, you know, they have a whole multitude of things, and the last one is vegetation killer. This says that it holds it up for a year, so you might want to consider this too. This is in a liquid form, and I'm pretty sure that this is a concentrate, so you're going to want to put this in with some water, and then to apply it, obviously not where you're going to have any turf or plants. So, but in terms of, you know, keeping it easy and that, I would recommend for a homeowner just stick with the granulated form, you know, this. But if you get into some selective areas where you want to do some spray, you can. Just be careful on the Roundup that you don't spray, you know, turf or anything else that you have around with plants and stuff. Because I've seen that happen. You know, you're spraying it on a windy day, and you might not think nothing of it, but sure enough, you got some hostas over here, some plants, and now they're feeling the effect of the Roundup that you sprayed just a foot or two away. So, any other questions? Yes?
How often do you do it?
Which one? The weed? The weed and feed? You could just do this once a year. What you could do with this is you could apply this depending on how big your lawn is. Let's say you had some left over. You could always apply this in the fall too. I have a lot of guys that'll apply it twice. They'll do one like around Memorial Day, and then you could also use this as your Labor Day one. You know, you could do the Grub-X on July 4th, but you could do this around Labor Day in case you have any weeds that developed over the summertime. So I would tell you at least once, but you could do it twice too. You wouldn't harm the turf by doing this twice. But with anything, you just got to make sure that this is a little wet. Same thing with this. You know, think about it. You're putting a liquid fertilizer and a liquid selective herbicide on here. Selective means that it's only selectively taking out the weeds. It's not killing the turf, okay? Well, let's say it rains an hour later. Well, it's probably not going to be as effective. So when you do something like this as well, you want to make sure you kind of keep an eye out for the weather, that you have about 24 hours of dry weather so that you get the full effect of it. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but I think you'd have better results if you knew that it wasn't going to rain 24 hours after. Yep.
Is the crabgrass preventer also available in liquid form?
I don't think so. And yeah.
Because I think this would be easier for me to just hook it up to the hose.
Yeah, I mean, you could do either one. The one thing I wanted to tell you too, here's the thing, you know, like I was mentioning to you, there's a little bit of a trade-off. You know, I was telling you there's like pros and cons. Okay, so I remember I told you with this, if you put this down, this is going to prevent any crabgrass heats from coming up, but it's also going to prevent any grass heat coming up too. So let's say you have some open spots and you want to fill those in. Well, what you're going to do then is seed it and then use your starter fertilizer and then wait until Memorial Day to do your weed and feed. But if your lawn looks really good and you don't have a lot of open spots, you could just do your crabgrass here right now and then you wait until Memorial Day to do your weed and feed. So there's a trade-off there. If your turf looks really good, it's nice and full, just do your crabgrass preventer, follow the fertilization schedule. But if you have some open gaps and you're like, you know what, I don't want to wait. I want to get this stuff, I want to get it filled in. Put down your grass seed with the starter fertilizer. Wait until it's filled in. And then you're going to wait until like around maybe the mid to end of May with your weed and feed. And then you go ahead and apply that.
The question, will you be posting a video of this, or is that how you?
Yeah, we try and get all the videos up. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully I just gave you some information. You know, with fertilizer, it's pretty easy, you know, just to follow along the holiday schedule. And again, you don't have to be right on top, but, you know, try to be a little bit before. What you don't want to do, let's say, and just to give you an example, I don't want to throw you guys off, but like let's say you put your grub control like around Labor Day. Well, that's going to be too late. So you want to do it within like a week's time, preferably. So I would get it no later than like mid-July for your Grub-X, you know, your preventative grub control, and you just want to make sure that it gets watered in. I've seen a lot of times where people put this down and it doesn't get watered in, it's not as effective. So again, just make sure with the Grub-X that you water this in and you apply this when it's a little bit dry out or when it's a little wet and it's not going to rain 24 hours right after. Okay? Any other questions?
I missed the beginning of this, but for the just regular seed that you're seeing over here.
So like on a day like today, would it be a bad day to do it?
No, today would be a great day to do it. Yeah. I'll leave you guys a copy of this. I got one more. But to answer your question, I mean, to be honest with you, we sell, in the commercial market, everybody's a nut right now. They're trying to beat the rain. They want to get seed down. They want to get their blanket over it. So to seed it right before rain, it's perfect timing.
I have a question about the bag of seed.
Uh-huh.
It's a really shady area. So what would you recommend, the rye grass seed or just the shady mix?
I would just go with the shady mix, but here's the thing I was mentioning to the other people that were here. If it's a shaded area where it's getting at least 2 hours of sunlight per day, the Clark Devon Sunny Mix is going to do fine. If it's not getting 2 hours of sunlight per day, there's no turf that's going to make it. So you either have to consider, how do I get more sunlight there? Do I prune the tree? Do I just mulch it? Or do I put some ground covers that can take 100% shade? But you still need a couple hours of sunlight per day, and the Clark Devon Shady Mix will do just fine. But that would be the one that I'd recommend.
It has a few spots, areas where the sun hits.
Yeah. I mean, if it's me, if there's a way where you could try to open it up a little bit more to get a little bit more sunlight in there, that would be the best option, to be honest with you. But as long as it's getting a couple hours, I would tell you it would do just fine. So it's like anything. What you could do now is there's no foliage with the, with the leaves not coming in. Seed it now. It's going to come in just fine, and then maybe when you can see how it performs when the leaves come in, and then you can kind of judge from there to see if you can maybe get some more sunlight on those areas. As long as it's getting a couple hours.
So then you recommend this sunny mix instead of the rye?
The rye mix is a good mix to use for overseeding. Okay, you can use it for a sunny mix mostly, but the shady mix is going to be sunny. But if it's for a full sun area, I would tell you to just go with the shaded mix. Or the sunny mix, I'm sorry. If it's full sun, you're going to go with the sunny mix. If it's only getting just spotted sunlight here and there, you're going to use the shaded mix on there.